I kind of don't know what's gotten into me. This morning I put on this mic and I got out from behind the pulpit, and this evening we're standing out here in front of you. So I don't know what's getting into me. I know it's been announced, but one more reminder for good old times. CYC, if you haven't signed up and you're planning on going, be sure to sign up by tonight, because if you don't sign up by tonight, you'll miss the boat. So just a reminder about that. I was 18 years old, and it was the Sunday before I left to go to Freed-Hardeman University. So it was in August. And after services, we went and eat Mexican, me and some of my friends that weren't members of the church. Probably some friends that I did not need to have at that moment. But afterwards, we went to the best place we knew. We went to Fred's parking lot, and all got out of our vehicles, and some of them were smoking, and some of them were drinking alcohol, and I wasn't participating myself, but I was there in the midst of all of it. And something happened that I'll never forget. An elder from Booneville pulls into the Fred's parking lot, and I see him, and he sees me, and my friends are like, "Who's that?" "It's just someone from church. Don't worry about them." And he made a circle around our little group of cars where we were standing. He made a circle, and then he left. And that was it. No getting out of the car, no rolling down the window, no nothing. Just a stare down and to drive away. Well, the next morning, I was leaving for Freed-Hardeman University. So there was no conversation that was had with him. So that night, I'm laying in my bed, and I'm asking myself, I wonder what he thinks of me. And it kind of ate me up alive. I couldn't sleep that night, wondering what he thought, or wondering what he thought of me going to Freed-Hardeman and associating with those people. So I remember the next Sunday I came home, and I walked in the doors, and I was looking for him. And he was the first person that I was going to talk to, because we had to have a conversation. I had to clear things up. That feeling of having to clear things up, or having to have a conversation, is the same feeling that Peter has in John chapter 21. And that's where we're going to be tonight. We're going to be in John chapter 21. And we'll start off in verse 1, and we'll read to verse 4 right now. John chapter 21, verses 1 through 4, and it says, "After this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. And he revealed himself in this way: Simon Peter, Thomas, called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, 'I am going fishing.' They said to him, 'We will go with you.' They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing." So the last time that Peter and Jesus have had a conversation or have had much interaction with each other was what I talked about this morning, in Peter's denial, and that he denied that he ever knew Jesus, denied that he was ever his friend. Even at the end, he made an oath or a promise. "I promise, I've never known the man." And then they met eyes. And then Peter went away and wept bitterly. And that's the context of this passage. And I think it's interesting here that Peter said out of all the things in the world to do, he was going to go fishing. Well, that's because Peter was a fisherman. Before Jesus ever called him to be an apostle, he was a fisherman. So he went to what he knew best. So my question is, what is that thing for you? Maybe it's going to the woods and, getting time alone. Maybe maybe it's going for a drive. Maybe it's something that you need to do in those times where you don't know what to do. So that's what Peter did. He went fishing. And I also think it's interesting, if we read in verse 3, that his friends, the people that he had been with for 3 years, said, "We are going to go with you. We're not going to let you go alone." Honestly, they probably didn't want to be alone themselves after Jesus, the one that they had followed, was dead and had risen and is nowhere to be found at this point. So they are all alone with no purpose after 3 years of purpose. So they went with him. And then starting at verse 4, we see Jesus. This is where Jesus comes on the scene in verse 4. And it says, "Just as the day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore. Yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, 'Children, do you not have any fish?' And they answered, 'No.' He said to them, 'Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some.' So they cast it. And now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved therefore said to Peter, 'It is the Lord.' When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he was stripped for work, and threw himself into the sea." So we have Jesus come up, and he's on the shore, and he yells, just like he had done before. He yells, "Cast your nets on the other side." And they probably thought he was crazy. You know, we've been out here fishing and not catching nothing. What is casting our nets 20 feet on the other side of the boat going to do? So they did it. And the net was filled with fish. And like I said, this is not the first time that Peter had heard this before. Let's go to Luke chapter 5 real fast. Luke chapter 5, and we'll look at verses, starting at verse 2. Luke chapter 5, starting in verse 2. "And he saw 2 boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, which was Simon's, he asked him to put out a little from the land, and he sat down and taught the people from the boat. And when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, 'Put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch.' And Simon answered, 'Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. But at your word, I will let down the nets.' And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both the boats, so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' feet, saying, 'Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord.' For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of the fish that they had taken." So this is not the first time that Peter has experienced someone saying, "Cast your nets," or "throw them on the other side." And if we read in verse 7 of John 21, we read what Peter does. "When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment." Okay, in my mind, if I'm about to go swimming, I'm not going to be putting on clothes. I'm going to be taking off extra layers that I have. So when I first read this didn't make any sense to me why he would put on more clothes, okay? And it wasn't saying that Peter was naked either. Our equivalent would be probably he's, shirtless with ball shorts on, or something to that effect. But I did some reading, and it says that it was a Jewish custom that if you're going to talk with a religious person, that you be fully clothed. So I think back to that conversation I had with that elder, and how I didn't want to, next time I met him, I didn't want to be in ball shorts and a t-shirt or whatever. I wanted to make sure that I was all ready for my conversation with him. And Peter did the same thing. He wanted to make sure that he was ready to talk to the Savior. And then moving on to verse 8, it says, "The other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from the land, but about 100 yards off." So Peter here jumps out of the boat. He doesn't care about the fish. I can imagine, I don't know how many men it takes to man a fishing team on a fishing boat, but I could understand that one less man would make it a whole lot harder. So I imagine Peter jumping off the boat and the other disciples saying, he's gone again, as they're trying to pull these nets out of the water, leaving them one man less than what they had before. And in verse 10, we read, Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have just caught." So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore, full of large fish, 153 of them. And although there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." Now none of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and so with the fish. This was now the third time that Jesus was revealed to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. So you have this scene of Peter jumping out of the boat and swimming as fast as he can to Jesus. And he gets there to Jesus, and he's ready to have this conversation that he's been waiting on for days. And Jesus, I would think very calmly, says, "Hey, why don't you help them get the fish in? Hey, why don't you get me some fish?" As he's cooking breakfast. And if you pay attention here, Jesus already had a fire, and he had fish on it and bread. So why did he ask Peter to go get more fish? Jesus could have made as many fish as he wanted to. He could have had as much bread as he wanted. So why did he ask Peter to go get more fish? I think it's because he knew Peter's emotions. He knew that Peter's emotions were high, and he had swam all this way, and he was wanting to just lay it all out for the Lord. And Jesus said, "Just hold off a minute. Let's let our emotions calm down. Let's get you back to where you need to be emotionally, and then we can talk about it." That's what I think was going on in Jesus' mind right here. And then going to verse 15. So they've eaten breakfast, everybody's calmed down. Jesus has let Peter sit over there and eat breakfast while he's having all these emotions. Like me meeting with that elder, he talked to me right away. I couldn't imagine him saying, "Let's just sit here for a minute. Let's just sit here and let you simmer in your emotions for a few minutes." But that's what Jesus did. Jesus let him sit there and think about it. Think about the fact that the last time he saw him, he denied him 3 times. And that brings us to verse 15. And it says, "When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?' He said to him, 'Yes, Lord, you know that I love you.' He said to him, 'Feed my lambs.' He said to him a second time, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me?' He said to him, 'Yes, Lord, you know that I love you.' He said to him, 'Tend my sheep.' He said to him the third time, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me?' Peter was grieved because he had said to him the third time, 'Do you love me?' And he said to him, 'Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you.' Jesus said to him, 'Feed my sheep.'" So we have this moment that most of us know about of Jesus asking Peter the same question 3 times in a row. "Do you love me?" A lot of people think that he asked him 3 times because he denied him 3 times. 3 times denial, 3 questions. But something interesting to me is that Jesus didn't just take his answer, but he gave him a task with that answer. And it was different every time. Verse 15, he said, "Feed my lambs." And then in verse 16, the same thing, but a variant, "Tend my sheep." And then 17, he said, "Feed my sheep." Why would he give him the same but different answer every time? I think it's because he wanted Peter to take care of all the sheep. He knew that the Jews and Gentiles were about to mix, that it wasn't going to be like it had been before. Same thing with children. In Jewish society, children were nothing. That's why it's such a big moment when Jesus let the little children come to him. So he wanted Peter to take care of all the sheep, not just the sheep that culturally he had grown up with, Jewish adults. And this whole conversation is leading to this moment in verses 18 and 19. In verses 18, it says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you're old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." This he said to show by what kind of death he was to glorify God. And after saying this, he said to him, "Follow me." So you have this asking of three questions. Do you love me? Lord, you know that I love you. And on the third time, you see that he pricks Peter's heart a little bit. It hurts his heart. Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. And I think with us sometimes, if we have denied Jesus, just like Peter did, Jesus asked us, "Do you love me?" Of course I love you. I messed up, but of course I love you. Do you love me? Yes, Lord, I love you. And just like the third time, and how Peter's heart was hurt, our heart should hurt when we deny Jesus. And then, like I said in verses 18, this whole fiasco of nets and swimming and questions leads up to verse 18, where Jesus says, "I know you love me, so this is what it's going to cost for you to love me." And I think it's interesting, he says, "You used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." So in the questions, Jesus asked, "Do you love me?" Verse 18, he asked, "Are you sure? Because this is what it's going to cost for you to love me, for you to actually love me." So I asked myself, what was the point of all this? What was the point of Jesus coming to them and all of this happening? I think of Peter and how he was a very unstable man at this point. 3 years in his mind were probably washed away. His best friend is dead. The kingdom that is coming is gone. It's not happening. Sorry. You placed the wrong bet. But Jesus comes back and says, "You have placed the right bet with me." And I think of Peter and how he went fishing and how he was going back to the thing that he knew to do. Peter could have chosen this moment not to be the Peter that we read about throughout the whole book of Acts. Peter could have chose to be just a regular old fisherman for the rest of his life. But Jesus assured him. Jesus assured him, "I know that you love me. So now that I know that you love me, here's your task." And with that task, Peter was not that just regular old fisherman. Peter was a man that gave his life to the Lord for the rest of his life. Now, thinking about the conversation I had with that elder, that next Sunday when I got back to Boonville, I come up to him and I asked him, "Did you see me?" I mean, I know he did. He had to. He stared me right in the eyes. But did you see me last Sunday night in the parking lot at Fred's with those people? Yeah. I saw you. What were you doing? Well, sir, I wasn't doing anything, but I was around people that were doing lots of bad things. And he says, I know you weren't doing anything. I know you. I know who you are, and I know what you stand for. And he said, I know this is a very moldable time in your life. You're about to leave home for the first time. You're about to go be with a bunch of people that you've never met in a new place. And I know this is a time that you could be molded either way. So I just wanted to tell you that I'm proud of you. And I look forward to see what you'll do in the future. And I see that moment right here with Jesus and Peter. He had just denied him. He had just done wrong. Peter's waiting for the conversation. He runs or swims to him, and Jesus lets him sit. And he asks him, do you love me? Are you going to do the right thing? You know I'm going to do the right thing, Lord. I know you are. Here's your task, to feed my sheep. Also, verses 18 and 19, this is what it's going to cost. This is what it's going to cost for you to love me, and for you to follow me, and for you to do what's right. So just like me, I needed a little bit of encouragement. Peter needed a little bit of encouragement from the Lord. And it all happened because he had an encounter with the Lord. He met with the Lord. It didn't just happen on his own. It was because he met with the Lord. And I think of that conversation I had with that elder and how in that moment I had an encounter with Jesus Christ through him, and the fact that he loved me and the fact that he wanted me to do what I needed to do. So my question for tonight is, just like Peter needed an encounter with the Lord, do you need an encounter with the Lord? Have you denied him or been doing something you shouldn't be doing? And you're just waiting for that conversation to happen with him. Do you need that encounter with the Lord? If you do, I pray that you come as we stand and as we sing.